All right. Okay, so Peter, right?
I think you're on, Peter.
Is Joseph in?
Hello.
Peter, I think you're muted still.
Thank you so much. I was just organizing my screen so I could see some text on it, which I'd gone to it. And the precept I'm dealing with is do not misuse sexuality, remain faithful in relationships. In the realm of the ungilded Dharma, not coveting or creating a veneer of attachment is the precept of not misusing sexuality. And I think that raises a really interesting question. What is not misusing sexuality? Because in terms of what is ungilded or not coveting or creating a veneer, and if we understand it as remaining faithful and not misusing sexuality, well, it's written in a very, well, I find often the precepts are quite negative. So I went and looked at Thich Nhat Hanh's version of the precepts, which are written as 5 modern mindfulnesses. And so he describes this particular precept as the precept of true love, which I think is really beautiful. And it's to be aware of suffering caused by sexual misconduct and committing to cultivating responsibilities and learning ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and societies. So it's a way of behaving as a Sangha, engaging with each other. And it extends even to, relationships such as homosexual relationships, where love is love. So I think that's quite beautiful and very powerful. And so in that, you're knowing that sexual desire is not love and that sexual activity motivated by craving always harms myself as well as others. I'm determined not to engage in sexual relationships without mutual consent. And so there needs to be true love, an idea of a deep understanding and long-term commitments with each other. And in India, in the literature of India, love is called Sringara. So, for instance, in the Ramayana, you see the story of Lalita and she's stolen by Ravana, and he tries to seduce her, but she's not having any part of it. And so Rama eventually comes and saves her. But the themes of Indian literature around love are always love in separation or love in reunification. So with the Ramayana, the lovers are separated, and so they go through despair and all these really deep feelings of hurt or beleaguerment. And traditionally in India, in Indian literature, so say, for instance, someone goes and flirts or someone goes and commits an infidelity, then that's no longer part of love. It's actually considered a negation of those feelings. And I think that's really important. And I actually asked to do this particular one this year because I wanted to read something to you all, which really has gotten under my skin and really bugs me. And it's a piece by a person who apparently is a yoga teacher and she's an academic. She has written this piece I'm going to read to you is part of her description of Zazen as being a philosophy of just sitting. And it's also in her view that when you're sitting, you can think whatever you like. And she actually thinks I would even say she's been styled as an industry expert on Buddhism. And I've been quite deeply affected by it personally. So So I'm just going to read this to you, and then I'm interested to know what you all think, and maybe this would be serve as a discussion point. So it says, and I don't think I'm taking it out of context. This is the key point of this essay. A favourite Zen moment of mine happened while standing around on the pungent ground of a mountain setting after an 8 days silent Zen retreat called a session. I joked to fellow sitters, don't you love sitting? By the end of the 8 days, you've basically murdered and had sex in your head with everyone in the room. Ha ha. Some folk chuckled. Some stayed dazed in the aftermath of the 8 day marathon. One quite prim, sweet person who'd indeed been molested and murdered in my head during that time turned to me in horror and sternly said, I haven't. Ha, 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 ha. Bless her. I haven't. And that's the story. And I go, I just see it and I just go. So I'm interested in, before I let you know what I think about it, I'll ask you what you think, because I'd be really interested to know.
Could you tell the story again?
Okay. So the person's been on a Zen retreat, and at the end of the Zen retreat, she basically says that she's not just murdered everybody, but she had sex with everybody in the room in her head. And then some people laughed about it and said, oh, yes, ha, 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 ha. But one person turned around to her and said, no, I haven't. And then she condemns that person and says, ha, 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 bless her, I haven't.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm just interested if everyone else thinks it's a misuse of sexuality or whether people think it fits in with a Buddhist or a Zen practice around sexuality and fits in with the precepts, because I have a really firm view in my mind about it.
This is Monica. I'm like off screen here, but anyway, yeah, my thought on that is like sometimes when I'm sitting and doing shikantaza, I'll get weird thoughts popping into my head, and for me, I feel like what she's doing is following her thoughts, like just daydreaming or something, I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like to me. She's taking a thought and running with it. Whereas really the practice is when you get a thought, you just let it arise and then it falls, I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like to me she's doing, which what she's doing doesn't sound to me like shikantaza. That's my personal thought on that. And I don't know, like misusing sexuality, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's okay to have fantasies about doing those things, you know what I mean? I don't know, that does seem kind of strange to me too,
It's okay to have fantasies. It's not okay to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some kind of a line there, yeah, that seems like I feel uncomfortable with, personally.
Well, there is something in the Bible that says that if you think of something, you did it. Like
Yeah.
if you think about murdering someone, you're guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's not a good thing.
That personally would have really disturbed me.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would not have sat with that person again.
Yeah, it's creepy. It would be creepy.
Big man.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, what?
It wouldn't have bothered me, but I could see how it would be very distressing to some people. Well, I don't think I follow the story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're in the session, and the young woman
Somebody accuses the one young woman of having had sex with everybody?
No, the woman, sorry, the woman has been on a retreat. During the retreat, she's been having sexual fantasies about everybody.
Oh, okay, she's having fantasies.
Yeah.
Then, and basically then says, "Hey, everybody, I've been having sexual fantasies. How about that?" And someone said, "Oh, no, I haven't." And then she condemns the person for not, who says, "I haven't." And then the story goes on, or the piece goes on, or the great thing about Zazen and sitting is you can think whatever you like and no one knows. And for me, I mean, I'm sort of interested to hear what others have said, because when I read it, I was really shocked. And I was shocked not from the point of view that, yeah, people do have fantasies, but the fact that somebody would actually write a piece about it and then use it in such a way to even condemn another person.
Yeah.
It's really, it's like almost a kind of, and I don't know, like I thought about this for 2 years now. And when I was confronted with it, it took me over 12 months to respond to it, because I just couldn't, I just thought, oh, this is really difficult, because it's a person might be fantasizing or imagining a relationship with another person, but then to say, well, you've been imagining all these relationships, but the fact that it's almost like non-consensual and it's violent,
Yes.
and you're not telling them, to me, that's really problematic. But then even the fact that you go and talk about it and claim it's a Zen moment and repudiate somebody else because they haven't been doing that when they're sitting.
Right.
That's why I find it really and I thought, I've got to talk to somebody about this. I've been telling Melody about this, and I go, and I just go, and I thought, oh no, if I talk to all of you about it, maybe, because I've had contact with this person and it really was very difficult, and I just wanted to know what people thought.
Does this person have a teacher?
This person's an associate professor at a university.
Oh my goodness.
Is it
Yeah.
No, does she have a Buddhist teacher?
I think that she she goes to a Zendo in a suburb in a major capital city. It could be anything. I don't know.
Oh.
It seems like a really great example of misusing sexuality.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
And
yeah.
that hits the nail on the head, really. It kind of like encompasses everything you can do wrong.
Yeah.
And especially
And
the-
what you said about non-consensual,
Mhm.
that's very kind of nuanced, but so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the more I've thought about it, like maybe she's thinking, oh, this is really tantric, like it's some kind of tantric practice. But even in tantric practices, they don't necessarily go down that kind of path. There's a kind of awareness of what you're doing in the relationship to the other. In my understanding of it, I don't know. It's just a very odd kind of depiction of sexuality in a Buddhist context. And yet when I read Thich Nhat Hanh about true love and committing to being responsible and the safety of others, and that there needs to be mutual consent, you just wonder about, well, what is going on? And even not coveting or creating a veneer of attachment, which is what can occur in your mental process.
Somebody could have went away from that and really traumatized. I mean, if they had been raped in their past, had any kind of sexual abuse, violence towards them, I actually would hope somebody would say something to her and really like, this is not okay, have a discussion. And, you know, I think it's one thing if it's our own practice and whatever we're thinking in our head, but to be in a group of people and put them at risk, and
It's aggressive.
it is aggressive. I just think, I know for me personally, I would never sit with that person again.
I would be disturbed. I'm disturbed just hearing the story.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
disturbing.
And I think, oh, sorry.
I'm gonna break in and I'm gonna put a few little boundaries around this discussion, because I'm realizing we're talking about a person and a person's public
Yeah.
views in a way where we don't know the person. And I would like to shift this from condemning a person for the views she holds and what she's written, and instead turning it towards how do we work with sexual energy as it arises, and how do we use that energy in a way that is wholesome. And we can talk about it in terms of what happens when people sit. But I'd like to take the pointed conversation about this person and her beliefs, like bring that back a little bit, if that's okay.
No, that's fine. I think the thing is, this is a published article.
Yeah.
So that's why it's out there. This person's very proud of it. So, and I don't want to condemn them either. So I just want to use it. That's why I didn't say who it was. I didn't go too much into the detail of the person.
Thank you, Peter.
Peter
I just realized we were just getting into the views of the, like, we were getting into the weeds.
Yeah.
Or we're becoming a
I
lynch.
wonder if there were any comments from anybody in the group after that. Were there any?
No, I don't know, because then the piece goes on to justify the practice in terms of Zazen. And I mean, I've had sort of some pretty incredible experiences in meditation going back over 45 years, and where there can be a real awareness of people's thoughts and things like that, which I find very freaky. You know, I don't know. So I don't know how. I mean, when there's a lot of sexual energy at that time. I mean, I have an acquaintance who talks about retreat romances, and that people go to retreats and there's a lot of there is sexual energy, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just where people are at. So, and people develop loving relationships.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's an interesting, interesting thought. And I think Keiko kind of hit the nail on the head with that. I think it's a really good example of, frankly, of misusing sexuality, because when I think of this precept, I think of kind of like power, like it's sort of when somebody is misusing sexuality, it's sort of like, I don't know, like they're misusing their power over somebody or something. And I kind of, like it just sort of fits in, the story kind of fits into that whole idea.
I think it brings up the issue of the consent issues.
The consent
Should
issue.
certainly be part of misusing sexuality.
Very important, yeah, exactly.
I like what you said, Joseph, about how we don't know this person and we don't really know the whole story. And my thought is, it's not really my place to judge. It's just kind of interesting. I wish I knew more about it, but I like where you were going with trying to take this, Joshin, because I think that's right. We don't know very much about it at all. It just kind of strikes us as kind of odd, but we don't really know.
I think that she was just trying to make a point that everything is fair game during Zazen. We have thoughts running through our mind that are marginally in control. And I think she was just trying to make a point that, even these kind of thoughts occur.
Mm.
That's probably on the fringes of normal. I think there was just probably a shock value attached to the statement without really being considerate.
Well, session can mess with your mind. You get done with session and I've babbled. I don't think I've said ever that particular thing, but I do know I tend to babble after session is over. So.
And didn't they say something about homicide too? Or did I mishear?
Yeah.
So two things that could be very shocking.
I missed that. Well,
I mean, I think it's interesting because when you meditate, I mean, things do pop into your head and they're not, at least in my experience, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know, I hope I'm not, obviously, I guess I'm not the only one because this lady, but I mean, it's not like the most, maybe like the most pleasant thought or like, I don't know, like whatever. And a lot of it has to do with maybe what kind of media I've been consuming or, that kind of, like if I've been listening to too many true crime podcasts or something, you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's true.
a lot of it has to do with what I'm consuming. And so I like that idea. I mean, I think it's interesting because it does, I can see where she's trying to say, well, when you're sitting, maybe you're not going to have the most perfect, pure thoughts because when you're sitting, you're facing yourself. I mean, you're just facing yourself, and what arises is what arises. And I think it's important to not be judgmental and just just sit with whatever arises, I guess. So I think that point is important. And if that's the point she was trying to make, then I think that's a good point. But yeah, I don't know. But the idea of just sort of following the fantasy is kind of.
Yeah. I think the question.
If she was to act on any of those thoughts, that would be a problem. Yes.
That would be a major problem. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. But the idea was just to convey that, these things race through your mind and a healthy mind ignores them.
Yeah. Look, I think that's right. I think what really concerned me partly was her lack of compassion, or how can I put it? The way she then reacted to the other person who said, "Oh, but I don't have that experience." And but it does raise the question, and I think it's a really good question, how it's about mindfulness. And how do we express mindfulness around love? And, or not misusing sexuality. I think it's a really, I mean, people have been struggling with it for 5,000 years. It's like, we're not going to solve it today.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's Dixie's turn.
Thank you, Peter. That was a really good, interesting discussion.
Thank you, Peter.
Well, I have the precept of do not speak dishonestly. So do not speak dishonestly, communicate truthfully. In the realm of the inexplicable Dharma, putting forth not one word is the precept of not speaking dishonestly. The Dharma wheel turns from the beginning. There is neither surplus nor lack. The sweet dew covers the earth, and within it lies the truth. Now, if I followed this precept exactly, I would probably just sit here in silence for the next 10 minutes, but we're not going to do that. I spent most of my life chasing words. I have a degree in writing and literature. I spent a lot of time as a technical writer. I write fanfic. Words are very important to me. And one thing I know very clearly about words is that every word you speak is a lie. A word, any given word, is an encapsulation of a whole novel of concepts. Just the word tree, for instance. You say tree and we all picture something, but is it an elm? How tall is it? How big is it? A single word cannot begin to convey anything, and yet we think that it does. We think that when we say something, it means something concrete. We think that it is important. We think that it is conveying meaning. But the meaning that we think it conveys may have absolutely nothing to do with the meaning it gives someone else. Because words are abstractions. Words are trying to get across something so much huger that everything we say can be a lie. And I think that is part of why the Dharma is inexplicable, because anything we say about it is going to be untrue. I've tried to explain some of the concepts in the Dharma before, some of the things in sutras, and it all comes across as double talk. It comes across as contradictions. It comes across as I say one thing and it comes out of meaning another. And another part of that is, well, when you say that something is not, it's ironic that I'm having trouble to find words when we're talking about truth, speaking truthfully. When it comes to conveying Dharma, I think Dogen has the right of it in that he speaks poetically, because conveying a concept in poetic terms makes the person think about what it means. And it makes you question what is being said. And I don't know that we necessarily question what is being said when it comes across non-poetically. I think when we try to put things concretely, people take it too literally, and they don't hear or even think about what else is being said or implied. Another thing I want to say about that is that there are things that cannot be put into words. And one phrase that I find very important about that has to do with Taoism, where they say the way that can be spoken of is not the true way. And also the concept in Zen of practice realization. There are things you can only learn by doing. One thing that I've always had trouble with is kindness, compassion, especially self-compassion. I've never been good at it. I read about it. I understood what I read. The words all made sense, but I couldn't do it. And then I met this group, and suddenly I had a living example of what kindness and compassion could look like. Words alone are useless. To speak at all is to speak dishonestly. That's not to say that you can't lie by not saying anything, because you certainly can. Lies of omission are as much lies as any other kind of lie. But to believe that words are truth is a complete and total misnomer. And I wanted to start off the discussion by asking if anyone can think of an example where someone has said something and it was the misunderstanding that came from, not from those words meaning something other than what was said, came across as a lie, even though the words may have been spoken truthfully.
Do you mean like a misunderstanding? You say something and someone hears something different? Well, like, if somebody tells me, oh, gosh, your hair looks great, I hear, my hair usually looks terrible. That's what I hear.
Yeah,
Is that what you mean?
that kind of thing, yeah, that's one of the things.
I had a situation recently where the person was conflict avoidance and didn't give me the whole truth about something. And that was kind of hurtful, you know, the way it kind of all shook out. So, yeah, so that was interesting, like in the terms of this precept, because there's just a lot of different ways you can speak dishonestly, I guess.
But they were trying to be, you said conflict avoidance, so they were trying to be kind.
No, they just didn't want to tell me something. So they just didn't. And so I had to find out sort of a different way, I guess. And that was kind of hurtful because it's like, well, you could have just told me, like, yeah.
It reminds me of text messaging. You know, there's just, you don't see any facial expression. You know, a lot of the text messages are cryptic. They've got initials instead of a full word. And it just is really hard to sometimes tell, like, are they mad at the other end of the line? Or are they just kind of being objective and just putting the facts in? You just see no emotion, you see nothing, so it's really hard to tell. They could be communicating something via text, and what you read in the words is just something totally different.
Something that bothers me about telling the truth is that people don't want to hear the truth most of the time. Like, just people being polite, like you go to the store and they say, how are you? You know, what are you supposed to say? I'm fine, you know? I don't want to say, I'm miserable, thank you very much. I'm having a terrible day.
Yeah.
You know, how are you doing? You know, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to say the truth. You know, people get upset when you say the truth. So.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear. And unfortunately, I do tell people how I'm actually doing when they ask me that question.
I do
and
sometimes too.
they don't. I mean, nobody wants to hear that. You know.
I'm not sure that's true, that nobody wants to hear that.
Okay, well, that's nice.
I'm really not sure that that's true. I think that sometimes an interchange like that can have depth and you can make a connection with somebody.
Yeah.
And it can be really real.
Yeah.
It can be really important.
It's true.
Honesty can also, however, have the effect of pushing people away. I find that honesty is the finest weapon when it comes to dealing with people who are not actually wanting a connection, people who are just being nosy.
Well, get rid of someone telling the truth, basically. A lot of people can't deal with the truth.
But when it comes to another facet of this precept, and Monica touched on it earlier about honesty and not telling the truth. This is another lesson I learned early on from Robert Heinlein, one of his books, The 3 Rules for Smart Lying. Tell the truth, but only tell part of the truth. Instead of, I broke the vase, the vase got broken. Passive voice is beautiful for that one. Tell the truth, but in such a way that no one believes you. And say absolutely nothing.
Those are all very effective. Really well.
But they all are communicating dishonestly. They just aren't, you're saying the truth, but you're not actually communicating the truth. You're not actually getting across to people. You're not actually, I don't know, I can't put it, I don't have the words for it. But
I mean, the truth is kind of a squishy thing. So when you say people don't want to hear the truth, or I mean, what does that actually mean? You know? Nobody wants to hear, oh, I just think you're a terrible human being, you know, and maybe that's your truth with that person, but is it the truth?
Yes, there is that. I think that also, the precept also, I think, conveys that when it says in the sweet dew lies the truth, that the truth is something solid, unarguable with, but it isn't something that words make sense of. That that person, your terrible person, they are a person. They're whole. They are a human. They are many different things. They are an individual. They are spectacular. They are miraculous. To convey, to break them down into the words of just being a facet of you are a terrible person is to minimize what they are, to separate them down into a fraction of themselves, and like you said, to be a deception, a lie,
Well, I don't know. I mean, it could be your personal truth about that person, but, you know, I mean, there's many truths in the world.
Well, and like you go back to the hair thing, you know, like most people would, if they hated your haircut, they would still say, oh, that's really interesting haircut, you know, instead of maybe saying, oh, I really like it.
Yeah.
But still, you know, I have a sister that is constantly, she says what she thinks. Now, maybe she's speaking the truth, but, you know, I never dress right. And my other sister and I kind of laugh because she said, you know, turtlenecks are out of style and you can't even buy them anymore. And so you should quit wearing turtlenecks. Well, that she's telling the truth as far as she is concerned. Of course, you can buy them, you know, so that, but
absolutely, you're
but it would-
100% correct.
you wouldn't want to just, you know, tell someone, well, I really don't like your clothes. You know?
And
Maybe that's the truth.
And
to
that
me.
might be your truth, but yeah, nobody wants to hear that. So if you're gonna say, well, people don't want to hear the truth, well, I guess it depends on what truth you're talking about.
What you think is the truth isn't always,
It's your truth.
it's your truth.
Even
Might
your
not
own, but
actually
even
be
your
the
own
truth.
truths aren't necessarily accurate
Yeah.
what Penny is saying is one thing, but also your personal truths aren't necessarily true. Like, I have a tendency to believe that I'm a terrible person. That's a personal truth. It's one I'm not likely to speak to other people, but I'm deluding my own self with it.
Or you could have a truth, you know, like maybe I go outside and it's really rainy and I say, this is horrible weather. And then 5 minutes later, I go outside and say, wow, that rain feels really good. And I don't think either one is not the truth.
I wonder if the Zoomies have any.
That's what I was just gonna
Yeah,
ask.
let's hear from the Zoomies. Ready?
Nobody? Joseph?
Well,
You go.
no, I think I'm just not going to say anything.
Just putting forth not one word.
Yeah.
Well, what I was thinking of, okay, I'll say it. What I was thinking of is, there's an element of this that I want to highlight, and that is like when these precepts were first, like not this exact translation of the precepts, but like the root of this precept, when it was put together, like this was coming from, or it was made for practitioners in groups of practitioners. And so part of do not speak dishonestly, communicate truthfully is about not being deceitful with your own practice, like with your own status and practice. It's pointing to the necessity of a humble heart in terms of practice and in terms of like continuing to point towards Sangha harmony. And so I can hear that a little bit in this, in the way the discussion has turned out. And I, excuse me, I want to point out that what I'm highlighting is not a deviation from what you all are talking about, but perhaps a little bit of a refinement in that, like, what is it to remain humble about your practice and to turn towards the care of the group instead of focusing on individual perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So this aspect of like, what do you just say to somebody with a bad haircut? Like that can show up as an example of part of what that is. How do we attune to the group and maintain some of that truthful connection where, you know, who knows if words are true or not, but it's that care of others that is coming through.
I love that. Speaking about that, like just when somebody said this last line, when we were just talking, the sweet dew covers the earth and within it lies the truth. And we were talking about the truth in terms of it being kind of almost a Morpheus type thing. I just had this image in my head of dew on, you know, just what dew looks like in the morning, and you can see the reflection of things. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't even know what my point is, but I feel like maybe, do you think that could be pointing to this idea that the truth is very nuanced, and you know, the way you speak the truth is nuanced as far as like just, you know, creating the sangha that's loving and, you know, I don't know.
That's beautiful. I think that's one of the most beautiful lines on this
It
planet.
is really beautiful.
Yeah, and when I read that line, that sweet dew covers the earth and within it lies the truth, that to me is something that is so true and so completely ineffable, you know. Well, I liked what you said about poetry. And
Yes.
I'm not huge on poetry because I usually don't understand it. But I think, yeah, it's like that. It can be so very true. The sweet dew covers the earth, and within it lies the truth. It sounds. I mean, that's like I know what it means.
Yeah, after this conversation, I kind of know what it means.
I know what it means,
yeah.
but I could never tell you what it meant.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this, it's like you were saying, it's kind of like the truth is this thing that I guess you'll know it when it arises, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, you know when you hear it.
Yeah, and it's like, well, let's use the haircut as an example, you know, like somebody comes in and I don't know, what was the example? Somebody has a bad haircut or whatever. They think they have a bad haircut and I don't know, maybe just the way you respond to that person is nuanced. Maybe you don't say, yeah, it's really bad. Or, I don't know, like you just kind of go with whatever the moment is and just.
Well, if you don't like it, it'll grow out.
Yeah, like yeah, exactly. Like you don't cause harm, I guess, is, you know.
Compassion trumps.
Yeah.
Well, to go back to Joshua's point, how do you address that and keep harmony?
Yes.
It's Peter.
Yeah, Peter,
Peter,
what were
you
you
go.
going to say?
I think it's really like I look at the screen and I see all of you sitting in the dark. And I'm going, yeah, it's dark in Oregon, but it's light here.
Yes.
And they're two different truths. and I'm thinking I'm going to write in a bit of paper. I'm writing just like, you know, do a Hegel. And Dixie is sitting writing in the dark. She looks at her watch. It's 8:15 p.m. nearly.
Oh, gosh, it is.
Now, it's not
Yeah.
true, but it is true.
Yes, right, Peter, yeah. Because where
And-
you are, it's like.
And it's really, I actually read something the other day, and it's about literary aesthetics, but in ancient India, but it's also about Indian philosophy in general, including Buddhism. And in Indian philosophy, and particularly Buddhism, there's a real propensity to starting from truth. What is true? You know, like, is there fire on the mountain? You know, like, is it smoke or is it a cloud, or, you know, what's happening? But there's always a position of starting from establishing the truth. And Western philosophy doesn't necessarily do that. But there's this idea of starting from the truth, and the truth is also seen to have a virtue, which is like light. Because at the moment, you're all sitting in the light, but so am I. But it's, you know, the truth is about a relationship to the light and to seeing on that basis. And I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of is part of the precept about being truthful or speaking truthfully or trying to be truthful.
Yeah, because being truthful doesn't always mean being blunt or rude.
Right, yeah.
You can be nice and still be honest.
We need to practice that.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you, guys.
Somebody want to say the verse?
I can say it. Abiding in the ephemeral world, like a lotus in muddy water, the mind is pure and goes beyond. Thus we bow to Buddha.
All
Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, Maha Prajna Paramita. Thank you, guys. That was a great discussion.
Bye, thank you,
Thank
Peter, so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dixie.
Discussion.
Night.
Good night.
Morning.
And good afternoon. Good night and good afternoon.
I don't even know what time it is.